Hello, everyone. Once again, this is Mr. Marketology with another marketing strategy session. And today I have Brian Massey from Conversion Sciences, and he is about to let us in on a little secret, some of the formulas that they have at converting better. And we're going to talk a little bit about things like the 180 days, which, I thought was very interesting and so forth. But I'm not going to tell you. I'll go straight to the scientist himself, Brian. Welcome to the show.
Thanks very much. I'm glad you had me on.
Great. And I see you have your lab coat on.
Yes,
which
indeed.
it looks very good, very professional. Right. Well, let's talk about conversion. I mean, everybody wants to talk about two things: lead generation, conversion. And lead generation means nothing without conversion. So let's talk about some conversion strategies. Everybody's so used to talking just a simple A/B testing, but what is very important when it comes to conversion?
Well, the most important thing is that you're getting the right data. So don't want to scare anybody off if you're afraid of a little mathiness or statistics. But the number one thing that we do when we start working with a company is we make sure that their analytics is set up right, and that what the analytics is reporting matches what's happening in reality. And it's not hard to do. Google Analytics is a great solution. It's easy to set up. And if you compare what Google Analytics is telling you to what your accountant is telling you or your lead manager is telling you, then you have confidence that the decisions you're making with that data will be good.
Okay. So, just like with the body, junk in, junk out, you need to make sure that whatever you have is clean and it's accurate, correct?
Yeah. And when you start collecting this data, this really becomes a little database that you can start asking questions about your visitors. How many of them are bouncing away? Which pages make people run away? Which pages are they exiting on? How long are they staying? Which pages do they seem to like a lot? Which pages are really important to get them to convert? You can start asking questions about your website and with quite a bit of detail using this relatively simple setup. And this database is there collecting data on your visitors. So you're not asking them what they think, because they'll generally lie to you, not on purpose, but we are wired to make stories up. This is actually measuring them based on their behavior in the moment when they're trying to solve problems.
Okay. And one of the things that I've noticed, a lot of companies say, well, I already have Google Analytics set up. I took the snippet of code and I popped it on my site and it should be running. But it's a little more detailed than that. Tell us some of the things that you should make sure is in order with your Google Analytics versus just inserting, the code or the code in Tag Manager or whichever way you're putting it on your site. Things such as there's goals, there's events, there's a lot of other things to set up. I know that it gets complicated at times, but just some of the basic things that you need to make sure you at least have this in place.
Yeah. Well, you may want to change some things on your site so that analytics can measure it better. So, for instance, if you have multiple pages asking for a lead conversion, you want to make sure that each of those pages goes to a different thank you page. So you can actually measure the performance of each of those pages individually. And you may find that certain pages convert better than others. And so you may say, well, let's make these other pages more like that one. You can also measure different offers. So you may have different kinds of offers used to generate those leads. You can really understand which of those pages or which of those content offers is generating the most leads for you. And when you have an individual thank you pages for each of those, you can set a goal in Google Analytics. Relatively easy to set up to look at those individual pages, and it will tell you how they're converting and also roll them up so you can see overall how your whole program is converting. The other thing you need to watch for is what we call blind spots. Now, Google Analytics thinks somebody does something whenever a new URL is generated. They go to another page. But sometimes we'll have popovers and things like that, overlays that don't generate a new URL. They just appear on the page. You can go in and put a little code on those and let Google Analytics know that that person saw that popover, and thus you can measure the effectiveness of these these popovers. So looking for those blind spots, anything that you can't see, that where you can't get a good idea of the funnel that people are going through, the process that people are going through, you'll want to take an extra step, either do some research or have somebody come in and give you a little bit of code so that you can measure those events as well.
Okay. Now, some of the more advanced sites out there, like some of our international players that have mini sites and micro sites and international sites, you know, when it comes cross-domain, how would you approach that? Would you have separate Google Analytics and then have it rolled up into maybe a business intelligence solution to roll everything up to make decisions, or is there a way to have everything go into one reporting tool?
Yeah, so you can roll them all into one account. I would look at it this way. You want to set up your Google Analytics accounts to serve certain audiences. So if you've got a US and a European site, you'll probably want to have two separate analytics accounts, tracking those individually. Unless for some reason there's a lot of cross traffic between those two sites. Typically there's not. So those would be two separate ones. But if you have like one site in the US and you have your corporate site and then you have a store site, maybe it's store.buystuff.com, and then you have another site that is community, you probably want all of those in the same account, because you can divvy them up. If you want to look at them individually, you can create views that just filter and look only at the individual ones. But you're certainly going to want to know people coming from community or blog, how they're interacting with the corporate site, and then how that's funneling them through the store. So you want all of that in the same account. So the general assumption is organize around the communities or the segments of visitors that are coming in, how common those are.
Okay. So it's not really based on a site; it's based on the audience that you're really looking at and how they segment themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, that's how usually when I talk about marketing strategies, we start with the audience first. You know, that's the key. That's who you're trying to attract.
We do the same thing, and that's why we like to have this analytics database, because it tells us things about our audience that we can't get any other way.
Yeah, and they've gotten so much more advanced now. I mean, it used to be just traffic, and it would just tell you traffic. Now they've even gotten to where now Google doesn't show you the names of the users, but they even get down to the users and give you some demographic information and omni-channel. You know, they give the different channels, which that's a big new thing now. Everybody wants to know, how are my channels working? Let's talk about the channel, because that can be some false positives in channels. You can say, well, this channel is doing well because the numbers look good or the percentage looks good, but it really isn't doing much in line of growing the business or conversion. It just looks good. So let's talk about those channels. How would you look at that?
Well, so it's always about segments. So let's say that you look at your website and your top level reports tell you that you have a 2% conversion rate. So 2% of all the traffic that comes to your site generates a lead. But if you go in and you look at the different sources of traffic, you might find that your paid search is converting at 5 or 6%, that your organic traffic is converting at 1 or 2%, or less than that, like 1%, that your social traffic is converting at 0.4%, a fraction of that. You begin to understand how the individual segments are performing. And conversion is an equation. So it's the number of people who become a lead divided by the number of visitors. You can increase the number of people who convert by optimizing your site, but you can also increase the quality of the visitors by having better pay-per-click ads. So you may want to focus on pay-per-click ads that are bringing better qualified people or bringing them to more optimized pages. Oftentimes what we see, for instance, when we're optimizing a mobile site, is that iPhone users convert differently than Android users. Yeah. So now we have to ask the question, do we have to have a separate mobile site for Android users and iPhone users? And if you can begin to get this kind of sophistication, you begin to understand how these different constituents behave, and you can offer them different solutions, different pages.
Okay, and that makes sense because it is a total different experience, and that's really what makes a conversion is the experience to the conversion. So if you make it difficult to convert, then you lower your conversion.
Right.
So
you had mentioned omni-channel, and one of the challenges is attributing. As you get more advanced with Google Analytics, there are some reports that will show you multi-visit experiences. So you can begin to see that 15% of the people that convert on your site came in through search, came back in again on the desktop, came back in again on mobile, and then converted on one of your emails or something like that. So you begin to understand those paths, and you can begin to look at those pieces of it and say, well, I want to optimize here. I've got 30% that are coming in and not converting, and they're starting from Facebook. Well, maybe I'm not going to spend as much money in Facebook because it's not performing as well for me. Or I want to optimize the landing page that my Facebook visitors are coming to so that more of them stay engaged.
I think that's the hard part, is properly looking at the attributions, because everybody states that they want the attribution model, but they don't look at it, I would say, properly. They look at more of the last click or first click and make a decision based on that. So they'll say, well, Facebook's bringing in everybody, and its first click is, social is bringing in so many visitors and so forth, but they're not converting. But it may be because the ad, let's say, for instance, what happened this week? Anything exciting happened this week? I don't know. Something exciting happens, and you post about it, and you send them to your site. Yeah, it brings in a lot of traffic. Not a lot of conversion, but it wasn't a converting type of post.
Right.
But then last click may be because, let's say last click is they on our site desktop. They converted on our site desktop, but maybe your site isn't responsive, so they couldn't convert mobily, but they would have converted mobily. Right. So it doesn't really say that, well, your desktop is so much better than your mobile. It just, last click may just be the last opportunity. So, how do you work with I guess you would say, the mindset of the business to get them in the right mindset to say, this is how you should look at your attribution? I think if they understood that, they would understand how to construct it a little bit better, because they just don't view it as, they view it either first or last. They don't view anything in the middle.
Right. Well, so it takes a little bit of sophistication to apply these attribution models. If your site hasn't been optimized, then you're probably okay starting off with that last click optimization. So what you're saying is that there's a segment of people, they've gone through whatever journey, maybe they've been here several times, and I'm going to catch them coming to my site in a mode ready to buy. And what I want to do is make sure there are no blocks, and make sure that they're getting the information so they feel comfortable and confident going ahead and taking that action. Most of the time, our clients are coming to us with unoptimized sites. So we're really optimizing initially for that last click. And while we could have gotten more conversions with an intricate attribution model, and specifically targeting those things, generally if you can get 20 or 30 or 40% increase in leads, just from optimizing at this last point, that's a great source of additional business, and is usually a nice win. As you start to understand your attribution models, you are really optimizing for smaller and smaller pieces, and that also means that you have to have more and more traffic, because there's less, as you start to divide it up into the different attribution visits. You have smaller audiences to test against, and it takes a lot longer to reach statistical significance. Okay,
that makes sense. So you stated on your site you have a 180-day program that you do, or a proven 180-day plan. Could you tell us a little bit more about that, and why 180 days?
Well, 180 days, we like it because we're a fairly competitive agency. And so that aligns our goals with our clients' goals pretty well. In 180
Mm-hmm.
days, we've got to come up with enough additional revenue to not only pay for our services, but to put money in our customers' pockets. And 180 days is kind of the minimum for us to do a good job. We have to collect enough data that we can accurately predict where the low-hanging fruit is. So, like I said, we start off by making sure that the analytics is measuring everything accurately,
Mm-hmm.
and that there are no blind spots. We put a couple other tools on that we love, click tracking tool like Crazy Egg, and video session recording like Inspectlet. And
Oh, I
these help
love
us
that.
triangulate in. And then we spend time looking at the analytics. We look at the site, anything else we can get our hands on, ratings and reviews, live chat, to help us develop a long list of hypotheses. These are ideas that could increase the conversion rate on the site. And as brilliant as we are, we'll be wrong on half of those. So we've got to organize those so that the ones that are most likely to increase conversion rate bubble to the top of the list, and those are the first things that we try. And you know, we organize them based on how much effort it would take to test that. It's easy to change a headline. It's a lot harder to implement product videos because it costs so much, and if it didn't work, then it would be wasted. We want to see how much proof there is in analytics and all of these tools that we look at. We want to use our experience as to how big an effect this has had on other sites and how much of an effect we think it would have. And we want to, when I talked about level of effort, I talked about proof, I talked about, and then traffic. So is the hypothesis on a page that gets enough traffic for us to test, or on a page where traffic's really important, like on these landing pages? And this really helps us understand where the low-hanging fruit is and where we're likely to find those winners. And then we spend the rest of the period testing our ideas to see which of them we were right about and which of them we weren't right about. And at the end of that time, like I said, we should have found enough winners that our clients are enjoying additional revenue that makes it a no-brainer for them to keep working with us after the 180 days.
Okay. And I'm glad you said it, enough time to collect enough data. You know, that's one of the challenges, especially in marketing, that everybody wants things instant. So it's like, well, next week, can you let us know what you found? You know, it's not a lot to tell you. I mean, unless something happens, anomalies do happen. But it's not much to tell. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that you do have to give it some time to collect, to even write the story that can be told. So
and we just did a long post on the statistics of testing for non-mathy people on the Conversion Sciences blog at conversionsciences.com. Go check that out if you really want to understand these the levers that we're looking at, and when we can say a test is really going to predict the future for us, and when a test might be misleading us and having us make bad decisions. Okay.
And you keep testing and testing and testing, right? It's more like continuous.
It should be continuous. What usually happens is when our clients begin to understand how data can help them make decisions, they start applying it to more than just their websites. They might start applying it to their business model. They might use testing to find the right pricing point. They might try different offers and things like that. So it can really significantly impact an organization when they start to understand that we have all these relatively inexpensive and free tools that are giving us the data we need. We don't have to guess anymore. We don't have to take whatever the designer hands to us. We can actually apply some data to it and test if we don't see the data in our analytics.
Okay, makes sense. Well, Brian, thanks for sharing so much. I encourage everyone to go check out Conversion Sciences and see if your data can tell you the story that you need to convert more. Thanks so much. Tell Joel I say hello.
I will.
Maybe, you know, next time we'll have the two scientists in to talk about it, but we definitely appreciate all the information that you provided.
Thank you very much. Good testing.
Great.